Well, we begin this morning with a dramatic night for communities in Queensland where heavy rain has prompted several emergency alerts, with some roads cut off by flash flooding.
It comes as the state's north and west brace for more dangerous thunderstorms today. Let's go straight to Queensland reporter Arianna Levy. Ari, good morning. Take us through the areas that we're worried about today.
Yeah, good morning, Emma. Well, these slow-moving thunderstorms that caused so much of the heavy rainfall to the southeast have now started to move north. They are expected to impact north and western parts of the state for today, but unfortunately the downpour in the southeast has left quite a significant mark. We've seen now 2 emergency watch and act alerts that have been issued for the South Burnett and Western Downs regions. Now, those areas, the local council has advised that there has been significant flash flooding from the intense rainfall. That is impacting roads as well as homes that are nearby. Creeks have been completely inundated by the amount of water that we've also seen. Residents are being advised to prepare to leave their properties if the water does continue to rise. But police have also advised us that they've sent out text messages to those residents that are impacted. Now, overnight, in the last 24 hours, the SES has received more than 145 call-outs for assistance. Those were mostly isolated to the Brisbane and Moreton Bay regions. A lot of those issues were involving tarping as well as sandbagging. But again, there was an incident that was in Jandowae last night in the Western Downs. The main concern there, at about 3:23 a.m, a man and woman had found themselves sort of trapped in their car on the road. When emergency services arrived, they had managed to free themselves by that time, but they were stuck in about 60 centimetres of water. So the main concern and message from authorities, again, is to make sure people are not driving through flooded water. That is still the message that we're hearing all the time. And there is a saying up here that goes, if it's flooded, forget it. And authorities are pushing that message even today.
Ari, what about the state's southeast? I understand there's some reprieve for residents there.
Yeah, so thankfully a lot of this southerly that sort of pushed the thunderstorms and rainfall that triggered so much around the southeast has now also sort of flushed out the moist air that we were seeing. So a lot of residents will be waking up this morning in the southeast noticing sort of a cool change, and those conditions are expected to dry out over the next few days. All eyes, however, are going to be on the far north. It is expected by tomorrow there could be a potential tropical low that could be developing in the Coral Sea. Now, it is unlikely to develop into a tropical cyclone, but communities are being warned it can threaten to bring a lot of rain to those regions. So a lot of residents are being told to sort of prepare for that potential rain. Now, the December forecast is looking likely for the remainder of the next 2 weeks to sort of be mainly calm and dry. However, it does look likely that the flood risk could return in the new year. Emma?
Okay, Ari, thanks for the update.
Australia has reopened its embassy in Ukraine almost 3 years since it was evacuated at the start of Russia's invasion. Penny Wong went to the capital, Kyiv, in person to make the announcement. Our Europe Bureau Chief, Mazoe Ford, is travelling with the Foreign Minister.
Throughout this war, Russia has repeatedly targeted Ukrainian energy infrastructure to interrupt heating supplies during winter and electricity for people right across this country. So the first stop on Penny Wong's visit here to Kyiv was to an energy plant which had been bombed by the Russians to see the damage that those attacks are having. She then came back to the capital here, to the city centre, to visit a memorial for fallen soldiers and lay some flowers there. But the main reason for her first visit to Ukraine since the war began has been to reopen the Australian embassy. When Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022, Australia evacuated its diplomats to neighbouring Poland, and that's where they've been since. It was meant to be a temporary move, but DFAT has repeatedly said it's not safe to come back. And this is despite the fact that 70 countries have moved their diplomats back in. The Canadians, who share the same building as the Australians, came back only 3 months after they evacuated. So it still isn't entirely clear why the Australians have stayed so long, despite our repeated questions to Penny Wong about that today. But she says now is the time for the embassy to reopen. Now it is safe to do so, she says. During her visit to Ukraine, Penny Wong has also announced further funding for the Save Ukraine charity, which supports vulnerable families. There'll be $80,000 Australian dollars for that charity. She also announced $66 million to go towards recovery and reconstruction across this country, as well as $10 million to help with the repair of energy infrastructure to make sure that ordinary Ukrainians can access electricity and heat.
Mazoe Ford reporting there. In other news, Australia has deployed a 64-person disaster assistance team to Vanuatu to help with search and rescue efforts following the deadly magnitude 7.3 earthquake. 14 people have been killed and hundreds injured, but there are so far no reports of Australians among the casualties.
Fiji's government says tests have found no methanol or illicit substances in the ingredients used to make the cocktails that were drunk by a group of tourists who became seriously ill last weekend. 7 people, including 4 Australian tourists, were hospitalised after they all consumed pina coladas at the Warwick resort last Saturday. The last Australian, who was still in hospital from the incident, is coming home after 4 days in intensive care.
A decision is expected today in the federal court over planned industrial action by New South Wales rail unions during the Christmas holidays. The state government was granted an injunction on Sunday. Rail unions say there might only be half as many trains running on New Year's Eve. The government has said it'll pursue all legal options to make sure services run as normal.
A major transmission project required to connect Snowy Hydro 2.0 into the energy grid has received final approval from the government. The $4.8 billion Humelink project will link the pumped hydro scheme through 365 kilometres of high voltage power lines in regional New South Wales. Snowy 2.0 has been plagued with delays and cost blowouts and is now expected to cost $12 billion.
A report commissioned by Master Builders SA shows copper thieves are costing South Australia's construction industry an estimated $70 million a year. The report was based on the cost of replacing stolen equipment as well as theft of copper pipes and cables. Master Builders SA says stronger regulation is needed to make it harder to sell stolen copper to scrapyards.
Researchers are encouraging people to be vigilant against mosquitoes as a flesh-eating bacterial infection emerges in a popular New South Wales holiday hotspot. New data suggests Burley ulcer has become endemic in Batemans Bay after a surge in case reporting in Victoria. Mosquitoes are suspected to be carrying the bacteria from possums to humans.
There are tributes this morning for novelist and teacher John Marsden, who's died at home at the age of 75. Marsden wrote the internationally best-selling book series Tomorrow When the War Began, which sold millions of copies and was adapted for film and TV. He founded several schools in Victoria's Macedon Ranges and was a highly regarded voice in the education sector, calling for children to take risks and explore the outdoors.
Well, let's take a quick look at the global markets, and the futures at the moment are pointing down. That's despite a rise on Wall Street at the moment. The Australian dollar is buying 63.03 US cents. Brent crude is up, but gold is trading lower.